Hey guys, welcome to our new classroom. Isn't it beautiful? It's my whiteboard and my little table and everything. So if you hear anything in the background of this video, my husband is sitting right over there, so he might laugh at me, but that's okay. I'm used to it. So if you're watching this video, you're in animal systems class. This video is not for ag business or foundations, okay? This video is for animal systems only. So what your assignment is this week is you guys are gonna be looking at how to balance a feed ration using something called the Pearson square. The Pearson square is a method. Now I'll warn you, there is math involved, but it's okay, it's not that difficult. It looks a little bit weird because there is an actual square, but it's just adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. It's nothing too complicated. So when we talk about balancing a feed ration, before we left, we were talking about nutrition. So we said that livestock need protein, they need carbohydrates, all these different things. But when we're going to feed animals, how is that going to translate into what we actually give them to eat? So balancing feed rations is a way to say, oh, if I give my cattle this many pounds of corn and this many pounds of soybeans, then they will have met all of their nutritional requirements. And it requires a little bit of calculation in order to figure that out. So I'm not gonna write out for you all the steps of how to complete one of these problems because that's in the PowerPoint that I gave you. But I am gonna work through two problems with you just so that you can actually see somebody doing it instead of trying to read it on a PowerPoint. So I'm gonna work through the example that's in the PowerPoint, and then I'm gonna work through number one on your practice problems sheet. Okay, so two things that you kind of have to remember when doing this is first, you should recall what a ration is. We had that as a vocabulary word. It's basically their diet. What are we feeding them? And then another thing that you're gonna see on your sheet is the abbreviation CP. And CP stands for crude protein. So that's something that you have to remember because that is kind of important. That's kind of what we're trying to figure out, how to mix these things based on how much crude protein they have. So CP equals crude protein. Okay, so make sure that you remember that as you kind of see that throughout your practice problems. So the first one in your PowerPoint, we're gonna start with that one. Again, I would read through this PowerPoint that I post for you because it gives you the steps. It says step one, do this, step two, do this, but this way we can kind of work it together too, just so you can see it done both ways. So the PowerPoint kind of talks about, it says you would need to look at a feeding standards table in order to figure out how much each feed type has in crude protein. You guys aren't going to be doing that. That's going to be given to you on your worksheet. That's just kind of explaining, if you were an actual farmer, how you would get that crude protein percentage. You would have to look at a table, but you guys aren't going to do that because it's going to be given to you. So the first problem says for a 2,000, we want to mix 2,000 pounds of feed. So at the end of this, we're going to have 2,000 total pounds. And the two types of feed we have are corn and soybean meal. Okay, so those are going to be the two. We want to mix those together to create 2,000 pounds of feed that have, 18% total crude protein. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing here. So I'm going to write that out for you. So we need 2,000 pounds of feed total. That's pounds. we want 18% crude protein at the end. So that's gonna be our end product is gonna have this in it, okay? So corn, it's given to you that corn has 8.9% crude protein in it. And soybean meal, which I'm going to abbreviate SBM, soybean meal, has 44.4%. All right. So this is just the amount that each one of these crude protein has, but we have to figure out how many pounds of each of these that we need to add to our feed in order to get this end product right here. So that's what this Pearson square is going to do. It's not too confusing, so don't let all these numbers kind of confuse you, okay? So the first thing that we need to do, there's a reason that it's called a Pearson square. You actually draw a square in order to, it kind of gives you a layout for how you're going to do your calculations. So I'm going to draw my square. Okay, so there's my square. Now, what do we put in it? So, in the middle of the square right here, you're gonna put your end product crude protein. Whatever crude protein amount you want at the end, you're gonna put that number in the middle. So just 18. 18 goes in the middle. Then we're gonna start over here on the left side. On each corner, you're gonna write your feed types and their crude protein percentages. So up here at the top, I'm gonna write corn, and I'm gonna write 8.9%. 8.9, and then at the bottom, I'm gonna write soybean meal, SBM, and I'm gonna write 44.4. This is all things that have been given to you so far. No calculations yet. Okay, so now we're gonna do some calculating. Okay, so the first step is going to be that you're going to go diagonally across this square and you're gonna subtract these two numbers, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I like to draw an arrow in order to kind of just remind me of what numbers to subtract and where to put it. Is the only reason that we put an arrow, okay? So we're actually gonna take 18 minus 8.9. I know the arrow would make you think it would be 8.9 minus 18, but that would give you a negative number, and we can't really give negative amounts of feed. So we're actually talking about a physical thing here. So we're not gonna have negatives here. So we're gonna take 18 minus 8.9, and we're gonna write it right here where the arrow is pointing. So if I had a calculator, 18 minus 8.9, it would tell me that that would equal 9.1, but I already have it written out. So I'm gonna write 9.1 right there. Okay, and again, all I did was say 18 minus 8.9, and I wrote it down here in the corner. Now, for this one, we're gonna do the exact same thing. We're just gonna write it in this diagonal upper corner. Okay, so again, you're kind of making a crisscross, all right? So here, we're gonna say 44.4 minus 18. And that would give us 26.4, okay? So all we did was go diagonally across. The arrows just show you where to write the new number, and all we did was subtract those two things. Now here's the part that gets a lot of people tripped up, and if you mess up on this part, you'll get the answer switched. You'll get it backwards. So this is really important. Now, on these numbers, we don't have any units. We need to say which one is corn and which one is soybean meal. So even though we went diagonally across down the box in order to subtract, the unit or the feed type just goes directly across. So I know that's a little confusing, but 26.4 would be corn, and 9.1 would be soybean meal. Okay, so I know that's kind of confusing. That's where people get kind of tripped up. You subtract in a diagonal fashion, but you carry that feed type just straight across, just straight over. All right, so don't mix that up, because if you do, you'll get the rest of it is going to be backwards. It's not going to be wrong, it'll just be backwards. So you don't want that. Okay, so up to this point, we're kind of done with our square. That's all you're doing with the square. We subtracted, and then we got parts of corn and parts of soybean meal. So our next step is that we add these two numbers together. Okay, so when I take 26.4 plus 9.1, I get 35.5, and that's kind of just like total altogether. And I know that doesn't really have like a unit. We're not in pounds or percentages yet, but we're about to take, we're actually going to find out a percentage and pounds of corn and soybean meal that we need. So this is kind of getting us to that step so far. Okay, so for the next step, what you do after you kind of get this preliminary part of your square is we're gonna figure out what percent of our total feed, what percent of this 2,000 pounds is gonna be corn, and what percent of it is gonna be soybean meal in order to get this percentage of crude protein. And then we're gonna convert that into actual pounds, all right? But first we're gonna find out percents. So in order to do that, we're gonna start with corn. All right, you kind of do them individually at this point. So with corn, what you're gonna do, here was our corn right here, 26.4. So I'm gonna write that down. Okay, so 26.4, and I got that from up here at our square. And you're gonna divide it by this total number that we just got. So divided by 35.5, okay? And if you did that on your little calculator, which I already have calculated these out, if you divided those things, you're gonna get 0.744. And usually when we do these decimals, we only go to like the third decimal place. You don't have to write 25 digits if that's what you get. Just kind of round to, just go to 3 after the decimal, okay? So 0.744. Now, what we want at this step is a percentage, okay? This is not a percentage, that's just a decimal. So in order to get that into a percentage, all we have to do is multiply by 100, okay? So times 100, and that's gonna equal 74.4% of corn. So I'm gonna write that kind of over here. 74.4% corn, all right? So what that's telling us is when we get to this 2,000 pounds, 74.4% of that total feed ration is going to be corn, okay? So that's kind of all that that's telling us there. All right, so we did it for corn. Now we need to do the exact same thing for soybeans. And I'm gonna switch colors just so that you can see the difference better up here on the board. All right, so I'm gonna do soybeans in orange. So we're gonna do the exact same thing. SBM, soybean meal. So up here we said we're gonna have 9.1 soybean meal. So we take our 9.1 and we divide by that total again. So 9.1 divided by 35.5. Okay? And use our calculator. That's going to equal 0.256. All right? And then again, we need to get that into a percentage, so we just multiply by 100. And we get 25.6% soybean meal. Okay? So I know that's kind of at the bottom, but 25.6% soybean meal and then 74.4% corn is going to be what our final feed ration, that's going to be the percentage of each that we have to mix together. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense so far. Now, we've gotten a percentage, but what we need is actual pounds. Because if you were somebody taking care of livestock and you're trying to mix up these two feeds together, it's kind of hard to just look in there and eyeball it and say, I think I've poured in 74.4% of corn. Okay, you want to say, no, I can actually weigh it out. I've got whatever, 100 pounds of corn. You want to say pounds, not percentage. So that's going to be our next step, is to convert these percentages into the actual pounds that we're going to add to this feed ration to make up 2,000. Okay, so I kind of run out of room. So I'm going to erase our square because we don't really need our square anymore. But we do need this calculation, these percentages that we just came up with. So I'm going to erase the square. Okay. All right. And I'll get a whole new color so that we can see. I like to use lots of colors. You already know that. All right. So we're going to take these percentages we got and we're going to get our actual pounds. So this is going to be our just final answer. Okay. So at the end of this problem, at the end of each Pearson square problem, you're going to have like your square that kind of sets up how you get your percentages and then your pounds. So you have to do percent, then pounds. Okay. So again, we have to do it for each one. So we're going to start with corn again. All right. So how we convert from the percent to the pounds is we're actually going to take our total pounds that we want at the end. So our total pounds we want at the end is 2,000. So we're going to say 2,000. And we're going to multiply by the percent that we got. But here's another thing that trips people up. We're multiplying by actually this decimal number, not the full percent. Okay, so we're gonna multiply this by 0.744, not 74.4. All right, so that's another kind of step that people tend to get mixed up. So for corn, 2,000 times 0.744. Remember, we just got that in the calculation we just did. All right. And if we did our calculator, we would get 1,488 pounds. Now we're in pounds because we just converted it, of corn. Okay. And that's kind of like our final answer for corn. All right. So we're going to do the exact same thing for soybean meal. SBM. Okay, we're going to take the total, which is 2,000, times 0.256 that we got down here, this number right here. Remember, you're not doing the full percent. You want that decimal that we got first. So 0.256. Okay, and that's going to equal 512, yes, pounds of soybean meal. Okay, and that's it. Then you're done. So what these pounds mean is now, if we need 2,000 total pounds in order to feed all of our animals. This example is a hog. So we need 2,000 total pounds. So if I went and mixed 1,488 pounds of corn and 512 pounds of soybean meal, I would have a feed that had this 18% crude protein. That's what all this means. So that you could actually tell somebody, hey, go and mix this up. And then you know they're getting all their nutritional requirements. Okay? So I hope this helps you out. Let me know if you have questions. Kind of my suggestion would be to read through that PowerPoint and then kind of watch this video. And as you're kind of working through these problems, all you have to do is remember the steps. The steps are going to be the same for every problem. There's not going to be anything weird thrown in there. Okay? So let me know if you have questions, and I hope this helps. See you later.